So I call this the meeting to order. It's a special meeting of council, continuation of the meeting dated Tuesday, April the 28th, which was at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It is we did adjourn the meeting to finish the approved agenda on to continue on Thursday, April the 29th at 10 a.m. So that is my calling the meeting to order. And I just want to ensure for the public record on our, and it's being taped and will be, as we always do, uploaded to our municipal page, the audio. Joining this morning at this meeting is Councillor Malloy, Councillor Foster, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Helpney, also our Treasurer Kirsten. In the council chambers where the mayor is seated is our CAO and our clerk of record, Christina. And having said that, I'm just going to turn to staff to say, is there anything else I do need to do formally to move forward with the balance of our agenda? And I'm getting the indication that the approved agenda from yesterday carries forward as we are. There's a pause.
Yeah. If I may, Your Worship, yes. I've drafted a new resolution to approve today's agenda. Today's agenda only has the carry forward items as unfinished business from the agenda from yesterday.
Perfect. Okay. So we will
continue. Can I ask you a question though before we get started?
Yes. This is Councillor Malloy.
Correct. Is there an opportunity now, because I forgot to do it yesterday, to add something to the agenda, a small item?
Depends what it is.
Pardon?
What would it be?
It's about the emergency committee.
If I may, Your Worship, Council may at their pleasure add items to the agenda. However, none of these additional items will have been posted, so the public wouldn't have had a chance to know that would be discussed here at this meeting.
Okay. So the answer at the moment would be no, Councillor Malloy.
Well, how does that differ from when we're able to add items to the agenda at a regular council meeting?
I think the clerk just explained that.
No, what I heard was the residents hadn't been made aware, but that would be the same as when we add stuff to the agenda at a council table.
I guess for council members to agree to that addition to the agenda, what aspect of our emergency plan did you want to?
Well, I'm asking for, I think maybe a second, third time, just receive updates. Even if it's just simply the minutes from their meeting, so the councillors are abreast of what's happening.
I'll ask you to pause there. Our CAO will make a comment for you before we get formally into approving the agenda for this continuation of our special meeting. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Councillor Moy, we've discussed this numerous times. I just want to bring Council's attention to the fact that 2 days ago, the Deputy Clerk and the CAO worked a 17-hour day with barely time to eat or go to the bathroom. We are struggling desperately to keep up with the workload and keep the operations of the municipality running smoothly. And we are communicating with Council at every opportunity when we have issues that are relevant for Council. Other issues that are being identified by MECG and addressed by MECG are operational issues. So, for example, placing pylons at the landfill site is an operational issue. The vast majority of the issues dealt with by MECG are strictly operational issues. And the MECG is populated almost completely by operational staff, not by members of council other than the mayor. Within the emergency response plan, it is the mayor's opportunity to report back to council and keep council informed. I believe that he did that yesterday, and he has that opportunity every chance.
Thank you, sir. So we'll move forward with the motion for approving of the agenda today, and we'll continue with what we did yesterday, that asking Mr. Foster to be the mover and Mr. Cameron being the seconder. And for every motion, I'll ask if each member is comfortable with doing that. So Mr. Foster is moving and Mr. Cameron is seconding, be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mariford Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the special council meeting of April the 29th, 2020 as circulated. All in favor? Mr. Malloy.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Cameron.
Yes.
Mr. Halpney.
Yes.
And Mayor supports as well. The motion is carried as circulated. And I'll go around the table to ask, and I was out of sync here, having approved the agenda. Prior to that, I should have asked, and I will do that now, if there's any pecuniary interest, and if there is, what is the general nature thereof. So I will go around the table and ask, do you have any pecuniary interest to disclose? Mr. Malloy.
No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster.
No.
Mr. Cameron.
No.
Mr. Halpney.
No.
And the mayor responds no as well. Thank you all for that. So next on our agenda is the CAO report 04-2020, financial relief during COVID-19. Just before I turn it over to our CAO, if you bear with me one moment, please. Just wanted to remind council, in the package you have the staff report from our previous special council meeting, which outlined the options A, B, and C. So that's in that report. It's not new. It's from the previous meeting. And then new to this package is the outlining the options D and E with a fair bit of information methodology and data interpretation, etc. And just to remind everybody that with our water and sewage system, the municipality must ensure the delivery of potable water whenever anybody may turn on their tap, and obviously the collection and treatment of wastewater. And my reminder to council is we have deferred the timeline in terms of late penalty interest. The due date of the first billing cycle for January, February, which would have been March 31st to April 30th. And my suggestion to council, whatever scenario or determination we make today, and I'll say regarding A, B, C, D, E, would be that we extend the April 30th date to, and I would suggest to July 31st. It would align with the next property tax installment due date, and we may give consideration at that time to extend even further. I'll put that out there as something that council should consider at the end of making a decision on what scenario we move forward with. Significant amount of information contained in the report. I'm not going to ask staff to speak to it at this point. Council members have had the information, and I'm sure everybody has read through it probably more than once to make sure we just get our heads around the information. The three scenarios the 5 scenarios, A, B, C, D, E, are fairly straightforward. Don't want to be presumptive though, so what I'm going to do is go around the table and ask each council member, do you have any questions on any of the content for clarification? And then we'll get on to discussion. So on that basis, I'll start again, as I always do, to my left. So Mr. Malloy, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just of a general nature, if I look at the 5 scenarios that are listed, A, B, and C are across the board, so whatever changes are set up by those particular scenarios would impact both residential and commercial customers, whereas D and E are for commercial customers only. Is that basically a safe assumption?
And
That's correct, Your Worship.
so I hope you heard that. Mr. Robertson said yes, that's correct.
Okay, good. So we'll carry on from there then.
Yep, thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
I had a question, I believe it was answered, or had an idea of the answer. So scenario D includes 10% increase that we voted on at the start of the year.
That's correct, Richard. It leaves that 10% increase in place.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cameron?
At this moment.
Thank you. Mr. Halfney?
No. Can I say something, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you can, Mr. Halfney.
Sorry. Just at the start of the meeting, you said Thursday. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, but.
Sorry, I would just ask you to repeat that. I didn't quite catch every word you were saying.
No. At the start of the meeting, you said Thursday the 29th. I don't know if that makes any difference.
What day is it?
I've lost track.
I'm
It's
turning to
Wednesday.
everybody asking what day it is. I know it's April.
Wednesday, Your Worship.
Okay,
Wednesday,
that's
20.
good. That's good enough.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, for the record, will correct, but thank you, sir, for catching that. Our special meeting was Tuesday, April the 28th. We adjourned that meeting. We are meeting again today, Wednesday, April the 29th at 10 a.m. Thank you very much for that. Ooh. Well done, sir.
Does he have any more questions, Your Worship?
So, are there any, there aren't any further questions on the content of the report? The next opportunity for council is to decide what direction they would like to go to in terms of providing assistance to our business community. I'm not sure, Mr. Foster, were you going to comment on that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so if I may, from jumping in, by the way, thank you to staff. The report's very clear. I would really like to see scenario D as our relief program for commercial sector, simply because it's very simple to understand and it's very straightforward. It converts all of our businesses to residential for the duration until council changes votes otherwise, but this would have an immediate impact for businesses. Even businesses such as the restaurants that are continuing operations, if switching to residential ends up costing them more money, we can just put them back to commercial. But I would like to see just a nice, simple statement by council would be to vote in favor of scenario D.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. So I'll go around the table and ask if there are any comments on what Mr. Foster is suggesting, the direction we go. So I'll start with Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, my inclination is to agree with Councillor Foster with the proviso that there is a sunset clause when we establish a sunset clause, and so we know when we're going back to the regular type of thing. I tend to agree with that proposal.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, just one, pardon me, excuse me, before I go to Mr. Cameron. In the report, in the conclusion, it says staff have provided the information council requested on options to provide financial relief to the water, wastewater, commercial ratepayers in America Wolford. So certainly D does go that direction. Mr. Cameron.
In reviewing all the different scenarios, I would have liked to have had another scenario included in there that all businesses that are inactive at the moment, that we waive all their fees, and for water and sewer, since they're not having any income, I don't think it's really fair to be charging them at this point in time. It's a scenario where I believe we either eat a cost up front or we eat a cost at the end of this COVID-19 crisis. There's already been one business announced that it's closing, and so I'm afraid that we might be losing a few more businesses. I don't think it's fair to add to their stress if there's zero income coming in. I think we should waive all fees for commercial buildings that are inactive at the moment. The ones that are generating income, I think that we should roll back 10%, like Mr. Foster is suggesting, and that we go to a residential charge as well. But I think
I never said, Mike, I didn't suggest that I apologize, sorry.
So I'll let Mr. Cameron finish that. Anything else to add, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, I just think that we should go a step further and really reach out and help these businesses that are some relief as well. But I think the businesses that are completely shut down and have absolutely no revenue, I think we should go to the extreme. And
Thank you, sir.
Big hand for them.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helpney.
Yes, I'm agreeable with Mr. Foster there. This scenario D looks very good. I'd like to thank staff for all the work they put into this and made it quite understandable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there seems to be a concurrence to move forward with option D, and just to put it in a context to remind council and the people of Mariford Wolford, we do have a responsibility, whether you are in your building or not. When you turn the tap on, we have to guarantee that there will be potable water coming out of it and it will be collected. So I'll move to the motion, and it's moved by Mr. Foster. You're comfortable with moving the motion?
I am.
And Mr. Cameron, you're okay to second the motion?
I am.
Thank you, sir. Moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mariford Wolford does hereby receive report CAO-04-2020, being a report to provide council with options for financial relief to commercial water and wastewater ratepayers of the village due to the COVID-19 for information purposes, and that council does hereby approve scenario D, that's ABC D, with respect to water and wastewater rates as outlined in this report. Are you in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Actually, can we have a little discussion on Mr. Cameron's comments about businesses that are closed?
Yes, I will entertain brief comments. I'll go around the table. So, Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about that, and so I'm a little intrigued by it, because it does make a certain amount of sense that if you got a business that is absolutely closed, has been closed for the last 6 weeks, and potentially could be closed for another 6 weeks, and are not taking any water. And I understand your comment about the fact that, well, we still got to maintain the system so that when they do open up again, they turn on their taps and the water is there. But there is a certain, logic, I guess, if you want to put it that way, to somehow finding relief for them, not just in scenario D, which I applaud, but in generally, why are we charging them when we know there's no water coming out? The option to that, or the argument against that, would be, say, snowbirds who go south. They still have to pay their water, even though they're not in their houses during the those winter months. But this is a somewhat different situation in the sense that, these are businesses that have been part of our community, have added to our tax base, and helped us fund our programs. And I think maybe we should just review Councillor Cameron's observations and see if there's not entirely his system, but somehow an acknowledgement, shall we say, that this is not a good situation for businesses that can't open their doors.
Thank you. We do need to be careful that that's not sustainable from a legislative point of view from the province, and we also cannot be presumptive. Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Malloy, I'm speaking. We also cannot presume that just because a business is not open for business, that somebody might not go in their place of business and turn the tap on. So we need to be mindful of that in terms of ensuring the system is working and sustainable. Mr. Foster.
So just 1 second. Can you clarify something? You said it's not sustainable by the province? I don't understand that.
So I'll ask Mr. Robertson to speak to that.
Thank you, Worship. So we've had reference in the previous report on April 9th and in this report to legislation. And also we attached the auditor's letter advising council in terms of legislative requirements to make sure that the system pays for itself. Essentially, if I understand what Councillor Malloy is suggesting, is that we not charge anything to any businesses, any amount, if they're not generating water. However, I guess there's several concerns with that. How we would enforce it might be very, very difficult. I'm not sure how we would do that. It would probably raise question about whether we were complying with the legislation or even making any effort to make sure that the wastewater system is financially viable. At the moment, I can't process any more ideas on that, but I think there would be several concerns about it.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. And moving forward, Mr. Foster.
Yes, I'd like to remind both Councillor Cameron and Councillor Malloy that many businesses in the village shut down for the months of January and February. Not past practice to not bill during those periods. We have to sustain the system. Right now, we are depending upon the residents on the south side of the river, those 375 residential users, to support the entire wastewater treatment system. So be very careful about giving away the store unless you're prepared to pay unless everyone in the municipality is prepared to contribute. But they don't have to, and the system is actually legally set up so that only the users pay. And I would really, really caution our councillors about adding an extra burden onto the residential people that are paying for this system. So the idea of giving something to our commercial sector, definitely in their time of need, we can afford for perhaps the rest of this year to charge our commercial residential rates because they're not using, but the idea of giving free, we just can't afford it.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Halfney.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Foster there. We've got to be very careful and keep the municipality viable.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Halfney. And I just remind members that we were all of the mindset with it of providing financial relief, not necessarily eliminating costs that businesses might face. So thank you. Good conversation, everybody. Very good points.
Mr. Mayor,
Who would be? Is this Mr.
Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Go ahead.
I'd like to add to that comment. I understand very well what Councillor Foster is saying, but there's going to be a loss no matter which way we go here. It's a short-term loss or a long-term loss. And if we lose businesses because of this, that's going to be a long-term loss, and we're going to have to make up that revenue somehow anyway. And we do have reserves within the water system that we can offset, and there will be compensation handed out by the province and the feds after this is done to municipalities. So it would be a short-term loss, and I think it's unfair to charge people water when they're zero income coming in. And the fact that they close down in January, February, that's built into their year when they do this. This is unprecedented times. These are forced shutdowns in some cases. Other cases, they're shut down because there's absolutely no people in the village going to their stores. And I think that we need to make a serious decision here to try and save as many businesses as possible at the end of this, because we will pay a price at the beginning of this, or we're going to pay a price at the end of it. Like I said, there's already one business that went on Facebook this morning and is shutting down. That's one loss already. So I think that will compound as this time goes on. And Ontario just went up another 400 cases. So there's no end in sight as we speak. And being a tourist town, our year, I would imagine, would be completely wiped out. These businesses are built on surviving for 2 or 3 months without revenue, not 8 to 10 to 12 months. So I think that we need to make a serious consideration of this. Thank you.
Thank you for everybody for their comments. I just underscored that we have an obligation under the provincial legislation in terms of how a water wastewater system works and is financed, and our commitment from the beginning of these conversations, as we did with our reducing our budget tax rate for this year, is providing some relief. The municipality is not in a position, I'll use the expression, not a bailout, to ensure that every business is going to be able to be viable moving forward. There are many other programs to to assist businesses. So great conversation. We have the motion on the table, and I'll just repeat the last part of the motion, and I'll go around for a yay or nay on that. And that is that council does hereby approve scenario D with respect to water and wastewater rates as outlined in this report. So starting with Mr. Malloy, yes or no?
Well, as it stands, yes, but I still think we should discuss Councillor Cameron's suggestion further.
So that's a yes on the motion. Thank you. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Opposed.
So noted. Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes as well, so the motion is carried. And so what, going to turn to staff in terms of how this information will be conveyed out as generally speaking, as we do as we did with the tax rate reduction decision and direction. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there is one more procedural step staff will need to undertake with council to bring this to life. What we will need to do now is bring back to council the bylaws that need to be executed. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible to bring all of the bylaws today. We didn't know how this discussion would land. So we will prepare that. We will have to book an additional special meeting with council in short order to try to get those bylaws approved so that we can implement it at the end of the second billing period, which is the end of January, February, March, April, the end of April, so that the village businesses can start to receive that benefit. The other issue to draw your attention to is the Deputy Clerk has prepared for Council the resolution with regard to extending the water bill, waiving the water bill late fees, extending them for a further period. I believe she's printed it for the mayor right here in the chamber.
Thank you, sir. Councilman, just pause a moment and we'll update you on terms of the next steps we're doing as a result of this decision made today. Thank you.
Technology and Alexis Clerk. Bear with us, Your Worship. Just technology doesn't always work as quickly as you want it to when you're under pressure. Your Worship, I think we're just about ready for you.
Thank you.
go, Your Worship.
Thank you. So I'm going to read the motion, and it's a motion moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Cameron, that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrifield-Wolford does hereby extend the due dates regarding water and wastewater billing until July 31st, 2020. So that will align, as I indicated at the beginning of the meeting, the next property tax due date. And should council want to extend this further, either the property taxes and or the scenario D further, we can do that in advance of the July 31st deadline. So, Mr. Malloy,
Mr.
any?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. It's Kirsten. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out that the next set of water bills are being issued next week. So are we extending that deadline as well, or was this just for the previous billing?
It would be for the billings start.
All billings? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So the first one that's already out there, and the one that would be generated in the second cycle. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
And Your Worship.
Question, Your Worship?
One moment, Mr. Robertson is going to make a comment, and then I'll go to council members.
And sorry for interrupting, Your Worship. I just wanted to make sure that in the resolution that we caught that and said all billings.
I'm just going to read the motion again. That the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrifield-Wolford does hereby extend the due dates regarding water, wastewater billing until July 31st.
I think that covers
And
it, Your Worship.
that captures, infers all billings. So it would be the January, February billing cycle and the upcoming billing cycle of March, April.
March.
Thank you. So I'll go to any questions or clarification on the motion. I'll start with Mr. Malloy.
No, I'm fine for now. Yep.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Foster?
Yes, are we actually extending the due date, or are we suspending the penalty clause? Do you follow me? We're going without revenue for the sewer and water until July, as opposed to encouraging people to pay their bills, but penalizing those that can't.
Oh, my apologies, Your Worship. I believe that the previous resolution that we're extending, I'm glad we just looked closer at that wording, was to waive the penalties associated with the due dates.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that
So
We're not actually extending the due date, we're waiving the penalties associated with the due date.
I believe that's correct, Your Worship.
yes, so we need to change the wording of the motion.
That's correct, Your
Yeah,
Worship.
so very good point, because that is indeed our intent, that billings do go out, that the billings do have a due date, but we are going to extend the waiving of any penalties and or interest. So we will modify the motion, and I'll read it again.
Your Worship, here was the wording that was used in the report.
Yeah, the wording of the report was waiving late fees regarding wastewater system payment bills to the end of April. So the new motion today would be moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Cameron, that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Merrifield-Wolford does hereby waive late penalties and fees associated with the due dates regarding water, wastewater billing until July 31st, 2020. And that captures the billing cycle January, February, and the upcoming one or current one of March, April. So again, I'll go around the table. Mr. Malloy, any questions, sir?
So just to clarify, that means that we're waiving the late fees, but the due dates remain the same.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Foster? Any questions on the motion? Hopefully we did not lose Mr. Foster on the line.
All right, yes, no question.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron, any questions on the motion?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Halpney, any questions on the motion?
No.
Thank you. No questions from the mayor. I'll go around and ask for a yea or nay in terms of the support of the motion. Mr. Malloy.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Cameron.
Yes.
Mr. Halpney.
Yes.
And the mayor votes yes as well. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. So now we move on to our next item on our agenda, which is the business survey impacts COVID-19. It is for council's information. So everybody's read it. You're well versed with it. It's for council's information. I wanted to provide some information to council, and it builds on this that staff, are looking at ways to communicate information about the federal and provincial support programs to local businesses, recognizing that the feedback, at least in the survey, indicated that of the 32 businesses that did respond to the survey, that 66% of those businesses were not aware of what government supports were available, and that's with this initiative that was started, afforded our economic development officer to contact each and every one of those businesses and outline and assist them if they needed it to find out what programs would be available for them and to assist that. With the recent announcement by the provincial government that they're looking at, I'll use the expression opening up Ontario, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting yesterday, while it's a bit of a roadmap, certainly no calendar of when those things might happen. It could end up being by region possibly, but certainly by sector. And an example of that would be, again, I mentioned yesterday with the opening up of community gardens. The province made the announcement that can happen, with a date, but also with with very specific guidelines as to how they would open. So what staff are looking at is staff are looking at a way to inform our business community regarding the upcoming announcements. Well, when I say upcoming announcements that may come out from the province sector by sector, and what staff are going to do is inform council regarding a process that could be utilized to assist our business community. So that's at this point for council's information, and we'll get some more information from staff in the very near future. It may well be when we have our next special meeting, potentially next week, if you want to keep that in mind, because as the CAO indicated, we need to do an adjustment to the bylaw regarding the water wastewater decision that council made today. So that's for council's information, and I'll now move to our confirmatory bylaw.
Sorry, Worship, I just realized that's the
Sorry.
resolution to receive the information provided by the economic development.
Sorry, it's a resolution to receive for information purposes the business survey results. So moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby receive report CAO-05-2020, being a report to provide council with a summary of the business survey results regarding the economic impact of COVID-19 on local businesses for information purposes. Go around the table. You in support, Mr. Malloy?
Certainly.
Thank you. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
I have a quick question, if I may.
A quick question.
I just wanted to know, as a supplementary to this report, are we going to form some kind of an ad hoc committee with the EDO and the Chamber of Commerce and the business owners to work on a recovery plan specific to Marrickville-Wolford?
Well, as I indicated earlier, staff are working on an approach to help facilitate providing information when the province announces various sectors to move forward. So we'll wait to receive that information from staff, as I say, maybe as early as next week. Thank you. So back to the motion. You're in support of the motion?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Mr. Halpney.
Yes.
And the mayor's as well. The motion is carried. Thank you. And now I do have a confirmatory bylaw, and it's moved by Mr. Foster, seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 34-2020, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting of April the 29th, 2020, be read a first and second time, and the bylaw 34-2020 be read a third and final time and passed. All in favor of going around, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And the mayor as well. The motion is carried. And I have an adjournment motion moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the special meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Village of America Wolford does now adjourn at 10:45 until the call of the mayor is subject to need. All in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
And the mayor does as well. Before I say carried and we all hang up our phones, wish everybody very safe and healthy, and thank you very much, Mr. Halpney, for this a Wednesday. The motion is carried. Thank you all very much. Bye now.